It is Humphrey Lyttelton. How nice to see you, Hump. How are you?
Lovely to see you too.
Yeah, good to see you. Still as busy as ever, I hear, these days.
Yes, yeah.
Trawling around the countryside, doing all those programmes. How long has your radio programme been going in Radio 2?
The Best of Jazz, 33 years.
That's a lot of records. A lot of records. And, of course, I mentioned 25 years of I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, which, again, in its...
It's actually 27.
Is it 27 now? How the time passes.
I did a pilot in 1971. And I took it on...
Apparently your trumpet's over your microphone. So
oh, right.
Maybe, oh, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
The old story. I was booked to do a pilot show, and I thought, well, I don't know, I'll go and do the pilot and see what happens. And that was in 1971, and I haven't quite decided yet whether I'll take it on regularly.
But it's a great gang of... It always seems like good fun to do, and as if you're all having a really good laugh amongst yourselves, which is very good.
Yeah.
It's funny, Roy Hattersley was talking about his upbringing, and, I mean, really, there wasn't an awful lot of cash around in his household. But yours seems to have been quite aristocratic, really.
Yeah, my forebears were mostly sort of landowners and high people in the church and in the army and so on, education. No musicians, as far as I know, anywhere at all. My father, I discovered after quite a long time after he died. I was going through his effects in his desk, and I found an old Cambridge magazine. He was up at Cambridge at the end of the 1800s. And there was a profile on him, and I never knew that he played any instrument at all. But there was a little sneaky paragraph in the middle there which said, when George Lyttelton plays the cello, all the cats in the district converge upon his rooms in the belief that one of their number is in distress. So, as he thought my own music was marginally less intelligible than Chinese, I posthumously get back at him a bit with that.
So who introduced you then to the trumpet?
My mother bought me a trumpet when I was 15, 1936.
But because you wanted one?
Yeah, I wanted one. I'd listened to the radio, a lot of dance band stuff on the radio, and there was somebody you probably met along the way, Nat Ganella, who was the sort of first trumpet player to play in the Louis Armstrong style. And I used to hear him on the radio, and I just generally got the idea that I liked the sound of the trumpet. But also, excuse me, there's a visual side of it too, because I used to look in the jazz magazines in the early 30s, and I used to see pictures of Louis Armstrong, and he was always, you know, playing right up up to the roof like that. And I thought to myself, I'd like to look like that.
You like the stance of that?
Like a bad move, actually, a bad career move when you actually start to play, because what they call a demurely, they call it a water key down there. And that's to let the water out, of course. To be polite. If you play like that, the water doesn't come out, it comes back. And the only tune you can play is I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles.
So obviously you had a natural lip for it, because musicians tell me that you either take to it or you don't.
Yeah, I think in a way the instrument takes you up. I think so, that's what it is. Once you start to float with it, you suddenly find you're stuck with it.
And there it is.
And there it is, yeah.
Exactly. Now, you talked about Louis Armstrong there, and clearly you got to meet him and to go on the road with him and open shows, etc., and work alongside him. So how did you get the opportunity then to open for him? Was it just because you were so brilliant and so much in demand that he had to have you? Well,
there was a bit of a row because he was billed to come over on a show which was really basically a variety show. We were on in the Empress Hall in Edgware. No, wherever it is. And I was on a revolving stage. And the guy who opened the show, there was Ella Logan, the singer, who was Annie Rossi's auntie, and there was a tap dancer with a wooden leg. It's true. He was a famous tap dancer.
That was a bit handy, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was called Peg-Leg Bates. And he was fantastic, rattle, rattle, rattle on the stage. You know. But the jazz fans all said, no, we haven't really come here to see a wooden-legged tap dancer. So they took them off the show in the end, and in the 20 minutes that was left spare, we went on instead. And it was marvellous. Fantastic.
And was he a great man to work alongside? And
oh, fantastic! You know, fantastic. He was very. He was. If you ever wrote anything nice about him, and I'd been doing a certain amount of writing about jazz, and he'd come to his notice, you were his friend for life. And the converse was true, but luckily I never discovered that. You know, he had enmities which went on through his life. But he used to like you to be there in the theatre. Nat Ganella always used to go along, and because Louis kind of adopted Nat Ganella. Whenever he arrived at what was then London Airport, he said, "Where's Nat?"
Straight off.
Yeah.
Now, it brings me actually to the Jazz Awards next week. Now, in the name of goodness, why has the BBC never had a Jazz Awards? They've got everything else, country awards, this, that and the other thing. Why never Jazz Awards?
Where the BBC is concerned, the word inscrutable comes to mind at once. I don't know why they've never had awards. They may have sort of sheered away from them a little bit because, in a way, awards are not appropriate to jazz performance in the sense that awards always have the best this, the best that, and the best that, and we don't deal too much in superlatives. And therefore, because you get somebody who plays the trumpet one way and somebody who plays it, you know, entirely differently, and you can't tell who's best. But on the other hand, the awards are marvellous occasions. This one's been designed very intelligently because they don't have a massive different categories, you know, alto sax, tenor sax, trumpet, trombone, glockenspiel. They just have, for example, the best instrumentalist. And I think that's nice because I was thinking about it driving around the other day. It has a sort of log cabin to the White House potential, because there was a guy in the 20s called Red Mackenzie who was a singer and also played Coleman Paper. And I mean, I don't mean because...
I know lots of people played the Coleman Paper very well, actually.
Yeah, yes, he was good because he was a good singer, so what came out through the Coleman Paper. Yeah. And it just occurred to me that had he been a great genius, like, for example, Louis Armstrong, or indeed Coleman Hawkins, with whom he played on a couple of recordings, it's quite possible that he could have...
That he might have won?
...become the best instrumentalist on Coleman Paper.
You know what? I think I should have entered from the spoons. So that might also have applied, you never know.
Spoons, yeah.
See, that could be brilliant.
Yeah.
Anyway, Humphrey, they're taking place next Tuesday.
That's right,
I'm so pleased you came along to see us today. And thank you very much indeed. To Humphrey Lyttelton, thank you.